Welcome to Crucible Radio. It's our holiday episode and part 2 of our interview with John and Sage. And,
What's the bet?
Yeah, to be honest, usually this is Bones' job to come up with the funny intro.
Usually we just get by.
Yeah. No, I'm good at mixing, and so I'm going to just mix the music up.
Oh, this is groovy.
Hey, Swain, Christmas Swain, how's it going?
I'm doing pretty great. It's been a long week, but I'm here.
Yeah.
Bones, how are you? Bones?
Bones.
Hey, Bones.
Bone. Oh, that's right.
He's not here.
He's not here. He's both visiting family on holidays, and he's also super ill right now. So everyone send your healing vibes to Bones, or send your increased sickness vibes if you decide you dislike him.
Actually, just send him different memes to at Bones_CR.
Yes, the memes will sustain him as he recovers from this cold that's going around. Anyways, Swain, here we are. It's Christmas.
Yeah, it was a great week. Lots of presents, lots of game-related presents. It's been great.
Yeah.
But yeah, what'd you get?
My girlfriend got me this sand. I'm playing with it right now. It's not game related, but it's like weird. It's called living sand. It's kind of like squishy but soft like bread.
Oh,
Quite enjoyable.
I know who would probably support your sand. Sports psychologist Steve. Just put the rake in the sand while between matches. Concentrate.
Brings my heart rate down.
Yeah,
Feel great.
there you go.
So, what have you been doing in Destiny for the past week?
I've been trying all sorts of things out. I got my Mina multi-tool, so I'm adapting to that. I got my Twilight Garrison, so I'm adapting to that. It's really weird. I've been trying to, I wouldn't say I'm changing my playstyle too much to adapt to these things, but, it's new to me. It's been a while since I've had the Mida, so I'm readapting to getting those headshots, being in the right, distance. I'm so used to the pulse rifle meta and the distances for that. So switching up is taking a little bit of time, taking a little bit of effort to get to that scout rifle range. But I'm loving the speed, setting up those bait and switch, you think you got me. And I turn around and get that snipe. Yeah, it's been pretty good. I've been also trying out the warrior method too.
The warrior approach.
Yeah, just running in with a shotgun, the speed from the Mida, the evade with the Twilight. Having a crisis here. Do I want to be a warrior or do I want to be a sniper? I don't know.
It says you can't do both.
You can't be both.
Well, what you could do is you can run a fusion rifle, and then you can basically do both.
Fusion rifles.
I literally have not used a secondary aside from a fusion rifle in the past 2 weeks, and I gotta say, look, everything you knew about fusion rifles from year one, all the range they had going for them, the play style, the charge times, all that sort of stuff, you gotta kind of put that aside and just look at them with a fresh pair of eyes and say, all right, how far out can I get with this thing? How does the charge time work? How do I control the recoil? All this stuff that John was talking about in week 1. And I'm just having a blast. I had a doubles match earlier today. I'm loving doubles, by the way. But a doubles match is the best. On Anomaly. And these poor guys must have felt so bad because I literally had 20 kills with a fusion rifle. They just kept getting melted. And, I'm not going to take all the credit. They did a lot of charging straight at me, which is certainly a favorite. But it's great when somebody thinks they're about to shoulder charge you and you just melt them. So I'm happy. We'll talk about these a bit more in the future. I think figuring out the fusion is going to require a little more of an in-depth sort of conversation.
I've tried them a little bit this week, but I have not given them the time that it's required to figure them out. So
absolutely,
I'll give it another shot, maybe a little bit more time. Then we'll come back and talk about them.
Well, everyone who tuned in last week got to hear part 1 of our conversation with John Wisniewski and Sage Merrill. We've got part 2 coming up this week. It's fun. It's a little different. We end up talking a little bit more about subclasses. I don't want to give anything away. So in part 1, we talked about auto rifles, and we got a lot of feedback on the internet with just a lot of good follow-up questions. And, we talked with them for about 3 hours, and, we're not very rigorous interviewers. We just kind of have a conversation. It goes where it goes. But in the process, there was a couple interesting auto rifle questions to be asked that we didn't get around to. So I actually I called up John Wisniewski. I caught him on the first day of his vacation. And he's alone at his home with his baby, who you will hear in the background. So my apologies. Hey, Cooper. And we had a quick chat, really going into depth with auto rifles and the changes that were made that hopefully should answer any lingering questions that people might have had.
Let's jump into it.
So, without further ado, here is my phone call with John Wisniewski about auto rifles, and then after that, we're going to roll right on into part 2 of our interview with John and Sage, continuation from last week. So, please listen and enjoy.
We sort of glossed over it and the conversation moved on. And it wasn't until I was leaving the interview that I sort of like mentally slapped my own forehead and thought like, oh, we really didn't get into that. Like we didn't really dig in the way the community was hoping we would. So I'm glad we have this opportunity to talk about it again before the next part of the interview comes up.
Well, I mean, we talked for 3 hours too. I don't know how we missed it. All right. Well, here's the question. 0.04% is a very, very small number. And if you're just looking at theoretical time to kill, it seems like it couldn't possibly make a difference, right? Like maybe there's an edge case where that's, if one bullet happens to be a crit instead of a body shot against a low armor target, maybe that, is one bullet quicker. But I'm getting the sense that there's a little bit more to it than just that theoretical time to kill. Why would you bother making a change so small?
There's a bunch of stuff that we've already kind of talked about, which is sort of and I'll just gloss over it now, sort of a reminder. The highest rate of fire auto rifle fires really fast, so it's very sensitive to small changes, and the small changes show up the most dramatically in base damage and anything to do with stability. That archetype of auto rifle, the highest rate of fire auto rifle, is already, I feel, in a very good spot.
And I think we've seen that from the community as well. Like Doctrine of Passing is very popular. Arminius D is definitely a favorite. There are cases in trials and other situations where people are competitive with these very high rate of fire auto rifles.
The night before the interview, I was watching streams and I was watching Hovey go through trials. He's taken subs through trials using Doctrine of Passing, and he was doing just fine. Again, I felt like, that archetype was in a very good spot. So that buff there was not meant to make a dramatic change in how that archetype was playing right now. It was just meant to help smooth out some of the other things that I was talking about. Like when damage fall off kicks in, you're going to get less drastic ramp down from your damage. And then the other thing to keep in mind too is that I feel like the highest rate of fire auto rifle is in a really good spot. And I feel like the medium rate of fire auto rifle is also in a very good spot. And that was helped pretty significantly by the last update. The only one that's maybe not quite up to speed with the other ones, or at least not up to the glory that it used to have back in the classic days, is the lowest rate of fire auto rifle. So those ones we're still going to look at. I mean, we're still going to look at everything as things settle. They're in a good spot and they are competitive. I'm winning fights. I'm kind of rambling now.
Yeah, enough of your anecdotal bullshit, John. Well, let's go back to something that you said. So you said an increase in damage, even a very small increase, can affect damage drop-off when you're at the outer limits of your range. Talk a little bit more about that. What is the effect of a small change there?
As you hit the damage fall off on auto rifles and you start to see the damage go down, that small, teeny tiny increase to your base damage that doesn't affect the rounded number that you see will help when the damage fall off kicks in. And basically the way that damage fall off works is once you hit a certain range value, and that's defined by your range stat, we start to slowly pull the damage down. And I think I don't want to speak when I haven't looked at the data recently, but I believe auto rifles go as low as 10%. And that's at the farthest away range that you could possibly hit. But it might be more than that. It might be 20%.
So here's the situation. So I have an auto rifle, and let's say it takes 12 bullets to kill if they're all headshots. Let's say. So there's a damage number underneath that for each bullet that can go up or it can go down. And in fact, there's this whole range of values that exist there that aren't going to change the number of bullets it takes to kill. You still have to get the same number of headshots. But because we're using, very small percentages, we can actually push that value out. So it's possible to make a change to that value by boosting the damage that won't actually change the number of bullets it takes to kill. So it won't actually affect the time to kill. But it will come into play when we're looking at range drop-off. So I've got, I don't know, let's say like maybe a meter more of wiggle room at the outermost ranges of my range. Is that a good way to look at it?
That is a very good way to look at it, yeah. Yeah, the time to kill in optimum range is not affected by that change to that archetype. But you will see an improvement in time to kill as range falls off. And that's probably... It's like you're saying, it's probably only in the wiggle room of about a meter right now. It's really small. Like, no bones about it. I've been very upfront with like, yeah, that's a super tiny change. Like, that was not meant to move the needle far on that archetype. And the reason is because I feel like that archetype was in a really good spot before the patch. And actually looking at base damage for the highest rate of fire auto rifles, they are higher now than they have ever been since we shipped the game. I definitely gave them a significant boost in 2.0. I think a lot of people remember in year one, the highest rate of fire auto rifles were not used by a lot of people because they were considered pretty low damage and pretty hard to control. Mm-hmm. So I definitely addressed that in 2.0, and I think I made that archetype viable again. Anecdotally, people may or may not agree with me. The data definitely shows that that's a viable archetype again. And then, my personal gaming, like when I'm playing at home, I tend to play a lot of Arminius D. It's one of my favorite guns right now, and Doctrine of Passing as well. Another thing that I wanted to get into that helps shine some light on how I looked at auto rifles this time around is sort of the stacking factor that comes into effect when you have precision damage multiplier, when you have the barrel upgrades that some guns can roll that add an impact bonus. So the numbers displayed in the patch notes, that's just a change to base damage. So if you think about base damage, you're also getting a 1.25 scalar on a headshot with an auto rifle. And so that base damage upgrade then inflates up to the precision bonus that you get. And then also on exotic weapons and the King's Fall raid weapons, those can roll barrel upgrades. And the barrel upgrades, as many people know, you can get stuff like aggressive ballistics. I don't remember the names of some of the other ones, but they can also add a base damage multiplier on top of like the base damage that you're putting out, that then also gets inflated up by precision damage as well. And again, I'll keep saying this. Auto rifles are very, very sensitive to small changes in their base values. So these are upgrades that only a handful of weapons can roll. And the reason for that is not because we're trying to create imbalance or anything, but because an exotic weapon gets a custom scope. It's a custom piece of art. So we don't put scope upgrades on an exotic weapon because that scope, the design of that scope is very deliberate, both for gameplay and for the aesthetic of the weapon. And so instead of scope upgrades, we give you barrel upgrades, and then exotic weapons get to roll from the barrel tree, which allows for damage increases. The tough spot I was in for 2.1 was that I could make your base legendary auto rifle, we could have turned the base damage up more on those. But what would have happened is that your Monte Carlo, your Supercell, your Suros, your Necrochasm, that all have these barrel upgrades, we're going to basically inflate that new value to a level that was pretty hot. So I was in the unfortunate position of having to tune the base auto rifle damage based on how the exotics were going to perform rather than how the legendaries were going to perform. Mm-hmm. And I will also admit that this is in direct contrast to a thing I said elsewhere in the interview where I said an exotic should never be better than a legendary, bar none. And so that is something that we are still trying to tune and still trying to work on. Because right now, an auto rifle that can roll a barrel upgrade is better than a legendary. DPS wise, just because you get that. Like, I think the smaller barrel upgrades will give you 2.5% damage increase, and then aggressive ballistics will give you a 5% damage increase. And this is just the base damage. So anyone who's running Necrochasm and Crucible right now knows, right? They're not saying anything.
Those two guys are definitely feeling it right now.
They know. They know they're doing well, right? So so that's where we're at with 2-1 on auto rifles. And again, I know this is going to look really suspicious to a lot of the conspiracy theorists that, like, oh, we're having this conversation now after everyone freaked out from the last interview. But, like, legitimately, I wanted to talk about this last time, and we just sort of moved on really quick. And then I didn't realize until as I was leaving and on my way home to hang out with Cooper here that we totally did not talk about this stuff. And so yeah, that's where we're at with auto rifles. And I fully believe that we can get to the point where the exotics are not, bar none, better than legendaries. And I think we can tune those damage values, the base damage, to be equal on the legendary, equal on the parts of legendaries and exotics, so that the choice about whether or not you run an exotic is more aesthetic and leaning towards, like, what is the cool thing that this exotic does, and how does that support my playstyle, as opposed to I just need to take Monte Carlo because it's got aggressive ballistics and that pushes my damage to where it feels good.
All right. Well, I appreciate all of our listeners who wanted to go more in depth on this and had a lot of great follow-up questions for me to ask. Really appreciate the input. And I hope people give what you're saying a chance and have a little faith that these are very, very complicated problems and that they require sometimes big changes and sometimes very small changes. And like you say, they evolve over time. I really liked Sage's comments talking about Mida, where he points out that what players perceive to be good and what is actually good can often be divergent, and you're in the unfortunate position sometimes of trying to manage both of those different things simultaneously.
Yeah. As a parting word to the community and the listeners, I want to echo all the, being thankful for all the feedback that we got. I'm glad, like, again, this was something that I wanted to cover in the interview, and it just didn't happen organically. So I'm glad we got the opportunity to do it. And then, if people are still feeling slighted by, wanting to have auto rifles be better, wanting fusion rifles to be better, like, I give Bones a fair amount of shit for his test run with Doctrine of Passing, and that was all in good fun. But also, really play with the guns in a new way, and make sure you're taking your 1v1s in a smart way. Make sure you're playing to the strengths of your weapon. And then, when you see a small increase on an archetype, don't necessarily assume you're just going to go in and start winning every fight that you take. End of the day, the main goal is to, as Sage said, create options, make playstyles viable. Yep. And that's what we're trying to do.
Bones said it last night, and I think he said it well. If you're not sure about fusion rifles, go play 10 games in a row with the same fusion rifle and see how you feel after that. I can confirm that initial impressions can be misleading. And actually, that segment where you take Bones to task is coming up next. So let's go to there.
Sweet.
Big shout out to good friend of mine, Sean Wonder, for providing the music this week. You can check him out at SeanWonder.com. You can find all of his links, his Twitter, his Instagram, all of that. So check him out.
I love sidearm. I run sidearm by choice a lot, and I do well with it. The data has shown Jabber Hockey and Iron Wreath are both quality weapons, which are helping players out when they run them. And yeah, I don't know. I mean, do you have a more specific question other than what's up with sidearms? Because I love my sidearm. I think it's great. I think it's an awesome gun.
I have a slight question, not a problem with them, because I was using Iron Wreath last night and actually having a good time. But I think some people are confused about the fruit space, I guess. And as our listeners know, Sage is the one responsible for teaching us about fruit space. And when we look at something like a fusion or a pulse, especially with primaries, you've got braced frame, and you throw that on there, and there's this like giant green bar and a giant red bar really showing you the amount of stats. And when you do that on a sidearm, it's like a little tick of green. It does the same thing on impact.
Yep.
You know, where like armor piercing kind of makes a difference. But so are those noticeable? Are they slight? Do they affect the gun as strongly as they do other secondaries or primaries?
Yeah, they
Fucking fruit space.
yeah.
Put on your tombstone.
You gotta keep in mind the whole fruit space conversation that we had, and this is basically like those bars are showing you the range of values that a sidearm can have in comparison to all other special weapons because of how we have to show the stats in fruit space. So when you're seeing, when you're looking at like brace frame or something that provides you a significant stability boost, and you see that bar go up a tiny bit, it's only going up a tiny bit because that's how much it's helping the sidearm in comparison to how much it could help a fusion rifle.
Right.
To be clear, they are identical. The change that it makes to the total range, like, you know, say it changes the range by 20% or something, gives you a 20% buff and takes something else away, right? It's doing the same to both of those guns. It's just that, like, perceptual difference because you see a larger green bar. You're like, this is way better. It's like, it is the same. And this is what I was trying to get across, but it's this weird concept. Just know in your heart that you're getting your 20% range buff. Even though you're only getting 2 pixels of green, like, it's doing the thing.
I'll take it.
Oh, you should tell him your little blanket story from earlier.
So we have this data visualization from all like the spread of like how many people are using what weapon type and stuff, and it's like basically like a giant rectangle and with like different colored bars for like, you know, 11% auto rifles, 9% pulse rifles, whatever, and like goes down the whole weapon spread
Over time. It looks just like the class one that I sent out, but for guns.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
and it's I made a joke today because like our UR guys sent us out the latest patch this morning with like all the latest data, and it's just like such a beautifully even spread across all the guns. And I was just like, oh my god, it's so beautiful. And I was like, I'm gonna get someone to stitch this pattern into a blanket so I can wrap myself in it every night and just roll around. Like, oh, it's so good.
That's wonderful.
So, when we last left off Crucible Radio, John was about to call me out for being terrible at Doctrine of Passing. So let me set that up. I got this 320 Doctrine with Hidden Hand, I think from my second Lighthouse trip of year 2, and I was just so stoked. And I had an Arminius D that was kind of good, and I was like, man, when auto rifles come back, this thing's gonna destroy. And there I was on the first day of the patch, having read the 4%, 7%, whatever, sort of expecting it to do the lie,
The conspiracy. Yeah, go on.
the thing you purposely did to make me look stupid on stream because I could not use this auto rifle. So yeah, everything else felt really good, and I just maybe it was just perception, and I'd love to be I want to be wrong about it, but and this goes back to what I was saying earlier, is just auto rifles to me, I can't see anyone using them extra competitively, and I want to know what I'm missing about that, what I need to pair them with, or why I just apparently suck with them when everyone else is getting tons of kills.
Sure. So I think the first thing that you want to do is hit the guy.
Shit, okay. I knew it was something.
Yeah. Step 1, hit your target, and then headshots help as well.
Okay, all right.
So that's
Do I need?
That's when
I need 60 to 70 headshots? The whole mag,
just I guess maybe in terms that you'll understand, make the numbers go yellow.
Okay.
Just do that. No, so actually, I think. Do you guys ever watch your own streams? Like, do you make videos and watch your gameplay?
I have Twitch record mine, and I've sat through a few of them.
Yeah, I think Bones. I think if you go back and watch that first game where you used Doctrine of Passing, I think you will realize that you did not give that weapon archetype a fair shake.
You were not doing step 1?
Yeah, step 1 was big.
Yeah.
And I think, there's definitely some excitement there where you guys were all like, having fun, playing Crucible together, trying out your new guns. And then you basically hit a wall when you picked up Doctrine of Passing, and I remember like you didn't get into a lot of one-on-one engagements with that gun until heavy ammo had dropped. So you were relying a lot on your sniping.
Yep.
Weird.
And then by the time you're like swapped over to your primary and you're like, okay, I'm going to go see what's up with this auto rifle, you're doing a lot of one-on-ones against dudes who had heavy machine gun ammo. And getting evaporated, as you should. I also noticed, like, and this is not, I mean, I was joking about it earlier, but this is definitely not a dig on your ability, because I mean you could play me under the table. You're a way better player than I am. But I was noticing that your tracking of targets that were moving quickly was not as on the ball as it could have been. So you're definitely, like, as you were unloading on a target, you were missing a fair amount of those shots. And I think the tendency that a lot of players have with auto rifles is to aim for center mass, and people forget to like tilt it up to the head and try and get some headshots in there, because that's where you're gonna see like the intended time to kill coming is when you're peppering. Yeah. I'm saying this now like purely objectively. Like I think if you went back and watched your stream, you would not disagree with me in this analysis of your play. And then, so yeah, you got killed a whole bunch during that game, and then you took a sip of your whiskey and you loudly proclaimed, auto rifles are still shit, and put it back into your inventory. So,
all right, guys, we'll link to this on the show notes.
Hold on. You just shattered the reality of everyone who criticizes me on the internet for being too nice about this game and never thinking anything is wrong.
Well,
I can't tell you, like, once a week, you never admit things are broken. Well, just watch me on stream, I guess.
You said it with a pleasant smile on your face, so it was hard to hate you for it. You know, I think that experience was probably shared by a lot of people, and I think that experience is probably shared pretty regularly across a lot of people when they're trying out a new weapon. Is you try it for like half a game, you get killed because you maybe weren't used to it, or you're not really thinking about the right combat situation to use it in. And then you put it away after you get shut down a couple times, because it doesn't feel good to get killed in a PvP game, right?
And I think to defend my own dignity a little bit, I know I was 100% engaging at pulse rifle ranges.
Yeah.
Like, after playing 5 to 10 games a day, if not more, for a couple months with Nerwin's Mercy and PDX, like, you just kind of default to that distance. This is where I start shooting. And I never felt like closing the gap first or trying to engage a little closer or actually keeping the bullets on their head, as you said. But
right.
It's a weird switch, and I completely admit that I gave it a game and felt like, you know what, let's keep messing around with hand cannons and the first curse and things like that.
Right.
But I have to go back to give any sort of justice to the weapon type.
If you had still been thinking that they got a 9% buff or some crazy thing, right? Like, you would have given it some more attention. You'd have been, man, it must be me. Like, but if you're going in expecting that, like, that basically these are not going to have change and they're still going to be bad, and you're going to get what you expect, right? And to be clear, like, we are definitely not saying game's perfect. Like,
no.
We are working on it. We're trying to make it as good as we can make it. And we're looking at data, we're listening to feedback, we're like making changes that we believe in every time. But perception has a huge, especially when you first go in, it affects you greatly, and we see this all the time internally. In fact, sometimes I'll fuck with people internally and say like, "Oh yeah, I made this massive change and I haven't touched the data at all," or I won't tell them about a change to see if they actually pick it up on their own, right? Because I'm trying to eliminate no, I want the actual results. Like, yes, in the end, I'm interested in the perception, and like, the game's got to feel good to play. But right now, I'm looking for, what are the results? Like, we find often that we have to internally, just so we can get a reasonable output from people, like nerf something completely into the ground and then bring it back up to where we had it before, and they were bitching that it was, unacceptably bad.
Yeah, that's actually, you guys laugh at it, but that's actually exactly what happened with the new shotgun ranges. I'm not gonna name names or put anyone on the spot, but basically, like, there's a handful of people who internally agree with most of the public that like shotguns are just like had way too much range, right? And where they are now was one of my first stabs at the new effective range for shotguns. And a handful of people would like come out of the playtest and be like, no, still too strong. I'm still getting sniped. And I brought them way down. and then slowly creeps them back up. And then one day they were like, yeah, shotguns feel about right. and then one of them, like one guy who was there, like saw the look on my face, and it was Lars Bakken, and he goes, like, you put him back to where you had him earlier, right? And I was like, yeah. So, but yeah, I mean, that's totally true. What Sage was saying.
It's not a fault on anyone. It's just weird, like, human condition. Like, this is just how people perceive the world, and like your expectations going into a thing absolutely affect how you feel about it coming out.
Get sports psychologist Steve on here for that.
Yeah, no shit. And then one more like anecdotal, thing to talk about too, with going back to Doctrine of Passing. I mentioned earlier that last night I was playing with Last Word a whole bunch to sort of get a feel for it, so I could address a bunch of the feedback if you guys happen to ask me questions about it. And I will say that the one weapon that unseated me the most when I was trying to use Last Word was Doctrine of Passing. That is one weapon that can absolutely compete with Last Word right now. And not anecdotally, I say that anecdotally based on my experiences with Last Word last night. That could be totally different, with a different set of players and a different playlist. Yeah, not speaking anecdotally, looking at the data today, Doctrine of Passing is definitely shows to be a viable option right now. So there you go. I've been patiently waiting about 10 days to drop that bomb on your head there, Bones.
I feel like those burns were good payback for last week's episode title. So we're
Yeah.
All right. So we got a lot of questions, and we're going to try and get through a lot of them. So we'll just do a quick lightning round. Start it off. This one's from Kami Salami. He wonders...
Pass.
All right. Kami Salami wants to know, currently, many weapons are counterbalance or bust when players are looking for good rolls. This is also seen for fusion rifles with braced frame and light machine guns. Do you think that stability adjusting perks need a second look due to the fact that they're seen as much more desirable than all the other perks?
So since we're doing lightning round, I wouldn't say they don't need a second look. I think, anything in the game at any point could always use a second look. Stability is a very, very desirable stat across multiple weapon archetypes, and I think it's totally natural and expected that most of the high-end players are going to chase stability as a stat. And like with anything else, we'll just see how pervasive it gets, and if it gets to the point of shot package, we'll totally look at it.
So we got a question about unflinching. How much flinch does it take off?
Yeah, it's kick deflection.
Yeah,
aim deflection.
It's aim deflection. So it's like if you're sniping or some version of sniping, depending on what it's applied to, then you don't get kicked off target as much, right? So you are unconcerned. You are unflinching when faced with incoming enemy fire.
We're going to scale down the amount you get kicked if you have that perk on, and also how far you're zoomed from your scope is going to affect the severity of kick from any incoming projectile. So kick on a sniper is going to be way more severe than it is on a pulse rifle or a scout rifle.
If I'm trying to cause flinch in someone else, am I trying to hit them as many times as I can? Am I trying to do the most amount of damage or trying to break their shield?
Yes.
Is a high rate of fire auto rifle the best way to go, or can I match it with a scout?
All of those.
Yeah, I mean it depends. So every weapon has a different amount that it moves it by, and then there are perks that increase it.
Yep. So there's basically, like, with each type of projectile, there's a payload that's going to be delivered to the aim deflection system. And that, I would say that the amount of that payload is equal in proportion to the amount of damage that projectile does. So heavy machine gun is going to like slaughter your aim deflection. A sniper round is going to kick you really hard. Auto rifle is not going to do a huge jump, but you'll be delivering a lot of shots in rapid succession, so you'll still be able to be pretty effective at moving their aim a little bit. And also another subtlety about aim deflection too is that you're going to get hit harder depending on the direction you're being shot from. If you're being shot straight on, head to head, it doesn't actually move your camera as much as it does if you're being flanked.
Right, because it's directional, right?
It's all directional.
Part of the way that we try to tell you with all the tools in the toolbox, like which direction are you getting shot from, if you're getting shot from the right, then your camera's going to knock left, as if you're getting hit in the head from that side. So your camera will do that, and then you'll actually slowly ease in that direction. If you had enough health to just stand there and get murdered by a heavy machine gun, you would eventually turn to face the attacker.
Yeah, and if anyone wants to go test that in the wild, just launch into a patrol activity, and if you're like level light level 320 or whatever, just go into a low level patrol activity and let some dregs shoot you, and just like aim down sights, move your camera around, look up, look to the side, look away.
They're shooting you with a freaking drag pistol,
right,
which is not a real gun.
Yeah, but I mean, you'll see how much it changes based on how you look, and then if you get the Vandal snipers that have the wire rifles, that'll actually knock your camera pretty hard. So that's all stuff you can test in the PvE game if you want.
Yeah, you can also look at the damage indication. It runs on the same system, so like the longer that red appears and stays up on screen, the harder you get hit. You know how you can tell if you get hit with a sniper or if you got hit with some small ammunition? That is the same thing that feeds into how much you get knocked off target.
Okay.
We suck at a lightning round, by the way.
I know.
That's right. So, Guerrilla Fighter, currently a very uncommon perk used in the Crucible, if at all. What was the intention for this one? And are some perks just sort of a PvE thing? Is that what we're supposed to think about certain perks, or how can we utilize this one in the Crucible?
Guerrilla Fighter, we actually made that perk to call attention to a thing that's in the game that I'm not sure a lot of people know about, which is if you are crouched behind a piece of cover that is roughly waist to chest high, and then you go ADS, if you're like looking at that piece of cover, it's like in your face, you're crouched behind it, and then you ADS while you're looking at it, you will actually like peek up over the top.
Automatically.
Mm-hmm. It's this thing we automatically do. We put it in the game. It's just like a neat little detail that not a lot of people know about. And we basically, our perk tech can detect when you're in this state. And so I wanted to make a perk that referenced this state somehow to both like, give a little thing for the players who actually use it. I want them to feel incentivized to do so, and then also just to call attention to that feature so that if players didn't know about it and they wanted to use it, they could. I think I had multiple people in the PvP test labs who were just like breathing down my neck, really concerned that it was just going to upset balance, like you'd get all this damage resistance and you'd be able to just like crush people if you just stayed in a spot. And I was fully expecting to have to like nerf this perk later on, but it turns out nobody really uses it.
Yeah, so if you're,
it's very situational.
Yeah, if you're fighting from cover,
yeah,
we'll just double your health and double your damage and see what that does.
Yeah, yeah, there you go.
I'm trying to think of the times I've used it, and probably just the Valis to Arik strike is the only time I can think of when it just comes up as a worthwhile strategy. So I'm just trying to think of.
There's a handful. It's one of those perks that's like, I understand why players are frustrated that it's there because it's very situational, and when you roll it on a gun, you feel like, oh, this thing has taken the spot of another perk that is way better that could have rolled on this gun, and now I hate this gun. Break it over my knee. John Wyszynski, you're a liar. But I think, there are a handful of spots on PvP maps that are placed in a very interesting place where, like, if you were to use this perk, you could do some cool stuff in, like, Control or Rift or Trials even, right? Like, you get a little bit of damage resistance and a little bit of damage boost. Mm-hmm. And it could be the difference in turning the tides on a 1v1 that you would have lost. So, yeah, I don't know. We'll see how it goes. I mean, there probably will be some future point where we're, releasing, the next version of the next Taken King, whatever that is going to be. And we look at all our perks and we say, okay, nobody cares about these. Maybe we should pull these out of rotation and then make some new ones instead. But yeah, for now, it's going to stay there. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, there you go, everybody. John Wyszynski buffing camping snipers.
I knew it. All right, well, let's change it up and talk about an exotic. I got to ask about Acleophage Symbiote, which without a doubt was my number one favorite gunslinger exotic armor.
Really?
We got a question from X Nasty. Oh, it's just the best. It's just like a free kill, and it's not such a free kill anymore. X Nasty says, explain the reasoning for 7 seconds, which is like more than a third of your super time. It's really encouraging you to use it in dangerous situations with no damage mitigation. For a class about, quote, taking the time to line up a perfect shot as per description, it forces us to be hasty.
Globally, when we talk about supers, we're looking for, as you know, supers are all about like when you execute them is what is critical. Like, there's heat and how fast you can earn it, and we should talk about that sometime because that's really interesting. But we generally want supers to be net you about 3 kills if executed well. Now, we have sweet exotics, and we want to pull you around and like make you want sweet exotics. As you mentioned, yes, that thing was awesome. In fact, it was too awesome. It was so awesome, in fact, that it was the only thing that gunslingers were running, right? So we want to make it viable and interesting, but we want to make an interesting choice versus the other things that you could take as a thermal hunter. Now, of course, I was talking about this earlier. There will be much screaming about, don't fucking tell me how to play. You're trying to force me off the thing. It's like, I'm not trying to force you off the thing. I'm trying to make the other things as viable. And so we felt like, hey, having an extra golden gun shot is really useful. We want you to be able to get 4 kills if there's a group of guys that are there that are super close. You can clean up with that and get 4 kills. But yeah, we're looking to the same way that we brought up a bunch of the exotics that weren't getting use or felt weak, or you're like, why would I ever take this? That was one that we brought down.
Sage, I thought one of the more interesting things we've learned in the past few weeks was your article about Titans, when you explained that teams that had Defender Titans were performing better, which is just, if we could all have the stats that you see every day, everyone would be really happy.
We brought a thing. We can tell you what the current best class to play per game type is.
Yeah, if you have any insight on that or stats to reveal, that would be super cool.
So we have a thing that isn't 100%, so we don't really use it strongly to balance yet. But we're calling it lift, and it's us trying to put a bunch of data together that gives us an indication of how much more effective is this particular thing in improving your ability to win, where win is you or your team score in a particular game type. Okay, so in control, and this is talking about, so if you're in the top 10% of players, our little future oracle says, if you're playing control right now, best guy is still Thermal Titan.
Thermal being Sunbreaker for all those non-Bungie guys.
Non-internal. Sorry, we changed it to solar right before we shipped, and it's like all of our internal tools still say thermal.
Thermal sounds kind of cooler, though.
Yeah, well, it's debatable. So, but interestingly, and worst is the Thermal Warlock, Sunsinger, and those vary by under 10%. But then if you go over to Clash, then it's all about the Gunslinger, and he's king of the mountain there in the top. And Void Titan is actually not doing so good, right? Not surprisingly. But then when you go over to Rift, the Void Titan is way king of the hill, right? He's way out there, just crushing. Where someone is using that super effectively to take the point.
Right. And when Sage says way out there, he means like double effectiveness of any other class in any other mode.
Wow.
Like it's like just in terms of looking at rough space on this graph, like the Void Titan is a huge spike in Rift, just massively effective.
Yeah, it gives you almost a 35% bonus here, according to this.
Yeesh.
But again, this is this is only, and that's only in super top tier players, because if you look at the lower 90%, like that, he's not even in there. He's not even being used. So it's you can. It tells us that you can eke a lot out of him in that particular game type if you're doing it right. And it also tells me that almost on the opposite side, you can really fuck it up if you're trying to run the Void Warlock in Rift for some reason.
Christ, right? single purple.
Again, a lot of this is just it's interesting for us, and then we have to dig down and try to figure out okay, what are players doing that is causing this? Is this some anomaly, right? But I just thought when I looked at this data, it was really interesting because there's basically a different class at the top of this graph for each of these different game types, which is super cool. That's cool for us, right? It means, they're all interestingly viable and different depending on what you're doing.
Again, turn the graph into a blanket, wrap myself in it.
So I'll burn through these real quickly. So
Yeah, what do we get for threes?
In skirmish, it's a close tie between Thermal Warlock and it looks like the Arc Titan. And then, it gets really ugly in elimination. It's really close. They're all right on top of each other. There isn't a standout, really. It looks like Arc Warlock, Thermal Hunter, Thermal Warlock, and Arc Hunter. And then, so then you got Rumble.
Yeah.
Titan, Arc Titan, the Striker, top of the heap.
Yeah, believe it.
Yep.
Is there a close second there?
Arc Warlock. Followed by
right.
Void Titan and Thermal almost on top of each other. And then last, let's see, we're sitting here, Salvage, Arc Warlock.
Now, I wonder, does Defender Titan show up in Salvage at all?
Does he show up in Salvage?
Yeah.
Yeah, he does, but it's pretty
middle of the pack.
Center, middle of the pack.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is elimination the same as trials, or does that have different stats for class usage?
The reason I can't say with authority is because I don't know what Nick did when he sent me this data, right? Like,
Right,
he's
okay.
just like,
That's
I'm like,
fair.
hey, throw me something. He's like, here's the class list since 12.9. I'm like, all right, sweet. That
Gotcha.
gives him some, some interesting little morsels to. Do you wanna give him some stuff off this?
I don't know.
Okay, well, let me ask one question. You guys got to throw me a bone because you haven't given me anything yet.
Okay.
If for the top 10% of hunters, what is the game mode they do best in, and with what subclass?
I mean, it's gonna be thermals.
Yeah,
It's gonna be solar.
definitely.
Oh, that was that gunslinger in Clash.
Clash Gunslinger is absolutely top of the pack. Void Hunter is third place ish in skirmish.
Yeah, that's about right.
And then Thermal Hunter is up there in elimination.
Yeah, and Arc is interesting since it's the Blade Dancer he's funny. He's one of those splits where all the really advanced players are coming to my desk telling me he needs to be buffed, and all the lower players and Nuska's like, fuck that. So Nuska's looking at this like amazing dot graph to like pull out some
Of guns.
guns. You don't
So-
want to tell him that thing up there in the top?
Yeah, okay.
Oh, come on.
Yeah, all right. It'll probably change in a week. So,
see.
yeah. So right now, the one gun that is being used to the greatest effect by the smallest amount of players is the Tuonela SR4 Scout Rifle.
Interesting.
Huh.
Far and above the Mida Multi-Tool.
Huh.
Yep.
I've got one sitting in my vault.
Yeah, see, you heard it here.
Yep,
We'll see, right? But that might, we don't know why that is popping right now, right?
Right.
So
And so in a month, it may not be there in that spot anymore.
or now that we've told the world, we're gonna have to do something about
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Might be picking up that
And
gun.
then, we dropped a hint earlier, but in the special weapons slot, Plan C is like out there like Pluto. Like it's just like way up there. And then in the heavy weapons slot, I don't know. I mean, I'll go ahead and say this now, not knowing this is actually because it really is that good or because it recently changed and a bunch of people are using it to great effect. But the heavy weapons slot, super good advice, spiked in a big way since the update. So,
I don't. All right, listeners, it's key that you understand here. They're not doing you a favor. They're conducting a science experiment on you. You are all now guinea pigs. They are testing how people react to being told random guns to see if it's capable of shifting them on their own.
Hilarious.
Because I'm seriously doubting if that is in fact super good advice. But all right, sure, we'll see what happens.
Yep.
I'm just saying, it's up there.
We're just telling you what we see.
Yep.
Yep.
Wow.
Here's the numbers.
And again, this is lift. This isn't like I murder everyone. This is when you're running this, some small number of people, more than 200, because I think that's what the filter is cut off. But
Yeah.
not thousands and thousands are using this to seriously increase their KD and their effectiveness in winning the game when they switch to that gun.
Yep.
It's unfiltered, and it's also not a super proven, like, oh, this is 100% true all the time, right? Like,
Got it. New loadout, Tuonela, Plan C, super good advice.
Correct.
Well, good luck with that one.
Meta.
that's the meta. So, yeah, all the way back to, we got super derailed there from Achlyophage.
Yep.
Well, hey, we're talking about subclasses now, and obviously one of the big ones on everyone's mind and on Bungie's mind has been the Titans. How do you feel after dropping 2.1 with Sunbreakers? I know I said we just said that they're still strong in certain situations, but do you feel like that the changes were effective and that strikers are
They were super effective.
are looking pretty good?
Yeah, they were. On the graph that I'm looking at right now, you see like high end and low end. They both went further apart from the sort of the center line, which would be 1.0 KD overall. And then, as the patch dropped, they both overcorrected. So strikers went over. They got even better. They went all the way from the basement up to the first floor. The reverse happened for the Sunbreakers, right? Yeah. And they dropped. And I was saying earlier today, I think that's just because everyone is like, they got so spoiled in like no look passing. Like, I don't even have to think about where this, just seek, throw the hammer and it murders, 3 guys. But both of those are converging really strongly on 1.0 KD. So that is great. And we'll see if it continues. Like, we don't have a lot, it's only a week. But looking at it right now, and also in distribution, right? There's a big pop in people going back and trying the striker, and then most of that is coming out of the Sunbreaker. So that's all ideal from our standpoint. I'm interested in your guys' take there, since I see a lot of chatter about weapons, but I don't really see a lot of chatter about class.
I will say that I changed to Striker Titan, simply being I could get the armor, I can get the Juggernaut perk going, and I have a Twilight Garrison now, so it's pairing with that. But I'm very much enjoying it. But I would say the past few days I've felt like switching it up, and I've played around with the Sunbreaker as well, and to see it, and I definitely feel the changes. It's deserved, because I could still get tons of kills with the Sunbreaker, but it feels like what you said. Like, I'm sometimes it's just 3. I'll get 3 kills, and I feel successful getting those 3 kills.
Just 3.
Yeah, just 3. Well, and what we're no way. Like, when I say 3, I mean it's certainly averaged over many attempts, right?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I've had plenty where I've gotten 0.
Yeah, and we're also looking for like, we have this other piece of data that I use sometimes to just show distribution, which is of all the kills that you are getting, how many are attributed to a particular piece of your loadout. And I'm looking for supers to hover right around 13 to 15% of your total number of kills in PvP. Previously, the Sunbreakers were high. They were 19, 20%, so they were up too high, and they've now dropped appropriately to hover right around 14%. So
nice. Well, with this last patch, we saw the extensive look at Titans and their subclasses. Will we be seeing similar treatments to the other classes as well?
So, would we like to? Yes, 100%. Will it happen? Questionable. Like, it's hard for me to say, yes, 100% commit. Like, expect it on, whatever, June, blah, 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 give you a date. But yes, that is certainly in the cards. We're looking at doing that. Next up would, in my mind, would be Warlocks.
No.
Oh, yeah.
No. we gotta do something about those Arc Hunters.
Oh, shit. Yeah, Noose wants to nerf them.
No, man. I wish I could invite the internet to be a fly on the wall for the raging debates I have with one of our other sandbox designers here about Arc Hunters. It is hilarious. Like, his name's Grant McKay. He's awesome. He's a great guy. I can get him whipped up into a froth about Arc Hunters. It is so good. It's so good.
That is a breakout YouTube channel right there.
Yeah. So we don't have as much of a huge disparagence in the performance of the other classes, which really pushed on us to do the Titan. But I mean, we certainly want to be doing these, roughly quarterly, pretty major updates, patches to the game, right? Now, we might decide, instead of spending the time that we did on the classes, we might do something else with, weapons. That is indeterminate at this time. That's all I can really say, other than, like, I'm busy making the new stuff.
Yeah, it's just
New stuff.
Yeah, it's just to underscore what Sage is saying is like, we're trying to prioritize regular updates to the game to do balance work. When we do that work, we need to it gets borrowed against work that we're doing for the next release. The time to do that work gets borrowed against our time budget for the next release. So we need to choose wisely, make sure we don't bite off more than we can chew. And so yeah.
Thermal warlocks need to come up. You heard it here.
Okay, I'm down. I'll take it.
And obviously the arcs. I expect the internet to start screaming about the arcs shortly. We'll see.
I've been saying everyone just be real quiet about Arc Warlocks while everyone freaks out about Sunbreakers. Shh, there's nothing wrong
Nothing
with,
here. Nothing
with
to see here.
Stormcallers.
Damn warlocks.
Not that I really think anything's wrong. I just love where they're at, and I'm fine with it.
Perfect.
But that might be personal bias. So that kind of does lead us up to, I guess, the final chunk of this interview, which is kind of looking forward. But before we get there, I said I would bring this back up, and I think it has to be discussed that sweaties are a huge thing right now, and they really do, even if it's this 0.001%, not to bring decimals back into this, but like it's such a...
I'm out. I'm going. Fuck this.
But they have a large effect on what people understand to be the best, and then they also have this great ability to find what the best is, because, Sage, like you said, it's two people of equal skill. They're going to come out 50-50, so what can either of those two people do to get better? One thing that people have been doing is using Thorn, and Thorn is still really good because you can hit 3 body shots and get a kill with the tick and the extra damage over time. And I believe that no high impact hand cannon or any hand cannon can afford 3 body shots with no critical hits and still get a kill. And the sweaty guys, of course, they're very intense and they take everything very seriously, but they're kind of in this world where like they're all going to use Thorn, and that gets stale for their own personal meta. Is there anything to say about that, about the, like, you know, the elite competitive side? I mean, they have a stake in this game as much as anyone else does, and I feel like it's a sensitive subject, but they have like real strong opinions on that, and how much can a serious hardcore group impact the way you guys look at weapons in the game in the sandbox?
Definitely. So first of all, before I get into that question, like just talking about the sweaty scene in general, I understand, the ask that's been put on us for a while now about the request for having custom games or whatever you want to call it, like private matchmaking. But I do want to take a minute to acknowledge and just shed massive appreciation on the people who figured out how to get these games matched together and create, like organically create the scene, like this grassroots scene. Like, to me, it's just like, it's one of the coolest things I've ever seen happen in gaming in my professional career. And I understand that it's coming from a place of like, they have this request for us that they feel like we're not meeting or that we haven't prioritized. And I want to set that aside for a bit and just like, when I first heard that there was an actual sweaty tournament being organized, it blew me away, and it just made me really excited. And speaking as a player of the game, not as a guy who works at Bungie, but as a player, I share that desire. Like, I would like to have custom matchmaking, and I want to see it enter the game. But I will be a little bit sad to see the sweaty scene go away. It's a really cool, really organic thing that's sort of like popped up, and it's just like, I don't know. It just goes to show that like people can just make shit work and make shit come together when they need to, and when they're being driven and put into interesting scenarios like that. So really quickly, I just wanted to acknowledge the sweaty scene and just say that yeah, we definitely hear the feedback. We definitely we hear it. We hear you. A lot of people here share that feedback, and yeah, it's just so cool that those guys were able to, like that scene that popped up. To me, it's awesome.
Answer their question.
What was the question again?
You corporate trail.
Yeah. So yeah,
Thorn is OP, and
Yeah.
do those elite groups sort of impact how you look at the Crucible and balances?
So that group of players is always going to find the fastest way to kill somebody.
Mm-hmm.
So That's not dodging the question. Like, yeah, Thorn is still good. I didn't want to make Thorn not good last time I changed it. The specific thing we were trying to address last time was the huge amount of range that Thorn had and the ability it had to quickly 2-tap somebody. If you got the 2 headshots, you could walk away, and that guy would burn and die. So last time we touched Thorn, those were the things we addressed, and I feel like we did that successfully. And since then, if it's coming back, that's interesting. It's still a good gun. We never wanted it to be a bad gun. If that, again, I mean, it's kind of the same answer we've given a couple questions here. If it once again becomes the only option for players to use, if they feel like they have to use Thorn or they can't play the game or they can't compete, then yeah, we'll have to look at it again.
I've been threatening to make a stop, drop, and roll perk for a while.
Yeah, so that's a really interesting thing. And like, yeah, I think
What? Yes, but absolutely, but what?
yeah,
Just the like ability to kill dots.
yeah. So that's one of the things
Does that make sense?
Oh,
Yeah, I love that.
it's one of the things.
I get it now.
Yeah, it's one of the things that we try to look at too. Is like, is there a way that we can solve Thorn without making Thorn suck? Yeah, one of the things that we have been thinking about is there a way that is there a thing that a player can do if they've been shot by Thorn to stop the damage over time from happening? I think that would preserve the identity and the fantasy of Thorn, but then also make players feel like they can do something about it when they get shot. So,
And simultaneously give you another reason to slide besides shotgun.
right. So you have to slide into a puddle and then crouch up and down real fast to splash it all over your body. And,
All of a sudden, there's just puddles on every PvP map.
In before camping on rusted lands back at the beach.
yeah, but yeah, no, Thorn does a really cool thing that I would hate to lose, which Thorn forces a disengage. And I think that's really cool. If you're getting shot by Thorn and you don't want to keep getting damage on you, you disengage from the guy, right? So I think a lot of other guns that could be used on a player, they don't think to disengage, right? They continue fighting and they try and get the kill before the other guy gets the kill on you. But usually, like, if a guy gets a drop on you with Thorn, the instinct is to run and sit out the dot and then go back into combat. And I think that's a really interesting mechanic, and I would hate to lose that, but I'm obviously we'll continue to look at it. So
Cool.
Yeah, I'm certainly interested to know if and I've been pushing this, and I touched it a long time ago. I touched recovery a long time ago, and I made it pretty strong.
Yep.
But I've been looking to see if it's possible to run, in the sort of really high end there, this sort of engage, damage, disengage, get your health fully back, then close for the finish. In that world, and I'd be interested to know. I mean, of course, Thorn's going to make that a little bit harder still because it's burning on you, so you won't start your recovery. But if you're running max recovery, as opposed to everyone, which you're saying earlier, is running max armor, if you can run basically a engage, break, get your health back in, it's 3 seconds or something before your health recovers or starts to recover at max agility or max recovery rather.
yeah.
And then run that. So yeah, I think, like New said, if it turned out to be this is the only thing to do, and we're really this is getting really dull because everyone is running Blink Thorn again, even if it's just one small segment of the community, obviously the high end players that are running sweaties that a lot of people are watching and paying attention to, we want you to be able to pick a variety of tactics and have those be effective.
And since we're talking about it, I pulled up the chart again, and I will say that Thorn is right on the 1-0 line.
Cool.
Yeah,
There you
it is under Last Word, it is under Mida, under Doctrine of Passing.
Well, yeah, because it's used in sweaties, and they're going against equal skilled people, so they're gonna go 1-1.
Maybe. I'm just looking at the data.
Yeah. Yeah.
I only want data when it helps my argument. Okay.
Right.
Well, talking about those two guns, and I guess maybe this is a question trying to look forward a little bit. We talked about the Last Word earlier, and the Last Word is almost kind of a weapon type of its own. It's a hand cannon, but it's full auto. It encourages you to use hip fire. I mean, Thorn is another one where it's unique. Like you say, it's got this unique mechanic, which is it forces you to disengage. And then I compare that to something like Mida, where Mida is just a good gun. Like, yes, you get the movement speed, but there's not any one thing about it that is completely unique to that gun. A lot of guns can roll lightweight, which is a start. A lot of guns can roll third eye. Do you feel like, looking forward when you're designing exotics, that you have to be more wary of building these guns that are really, there's nothing else like them in the game? Or, I feel like a lot of the year 2 exotics that we've gotten are cool guns, and I use them, but they are still, they're still an auto rifle. They're still a scout rifle. There's nothing that just sets them apart. Like, this is a complete oddball that's, in a world of its own. Is that something you worry about?
I think worry's the wrong word, but yeah, we think about all that stuff a lot. It's kind of funny that Mida has this like huge surge of popularity. Mida was one of the weapons I had to defend the most before we launched, and not a lot of people ran it for a really long time. When I say defend, I don't mean like people were trying to cut it, but I just like when you look at the roster of year 1 exotics, up against weapons like Icebreaker and Gallarhorn and Thorn and like all these guns that are sort of like legendary part of like the year 1 lineup. People looked at Mida and they were like, what is this? Like, you can't explain to me why this is an exotic, right? And it gets back into the thing I talked about. I think I talked about it last time, where like we try to have like a gameplay fantasy, like a very potent gameplay fantasy for each weapon. Like when I get a kill with Red Death, it heals me. There you go. That's why you run that gun, right? And I was listening to you guys' last episode where you were all like circle jerking each other about Mida Multitool.
Sounds about right. Yeah.
But like, yep, that's literally what happened.
Each one of you had a very long-winded, interesting explanation for why Mida Multitool is a good gun for your playstyle, and I think that's awesome. I think that's really cool that there's like so much complexity and sort of mystique surrounding this gun, but at the same time there's no like potent distilled fantasy that you can like tell somebody in one sentence, why do you run Mida Multitool, and you just kind of like, well, I mean, there's the speed and the aim assist and this like fast reload, and just like, yeah.
I would almost say there that like the fantasy for Mida Multitool, and maybe this is not reasonable, but it's kind of Fizz. Like Fizzer came onto the scene, and he built an army of people with Mida and Radiant Dance machines, and he said, I'm going to completely change the game, and I went over and played Halo for a little bit. I forgive him.
I don't.
Yeah, well, okay, it's complicated.
But it plays so well.
But I mean, it was that. It wasn't that. Maybe it kind of took that. Like, it is a good holistic gun. It's got a good overall experience, but the thing that made it click was kind of outside of the scope of the game itself. I mean, that is my one sentence answer, is it's like everything Fizz is about.
That's exactly correct. No, I mean, it's funny because Mida Multitool, it's like, it's right in the name.
Yeah.
It's the multi-tool.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be pretty good in all situations.
It's a Swiss Army knife,
like,
yeah.
It is a Swiss Army knife, right? Yeah. Like, that's what it's designed to be. Yeah, I look forward to, I mean, from our end, we would love to create 100 different, like, super sweet, super unique exotics that pull you around and play completely differently, but it's not easy. It's not easy to do that, and create these exotics. They are these pursuits that are interesting to get, and then once you have it, you're like, I've got it and you don't, right? And it's totally sweet, but doesn't completely break the game, but presents some new and interesting gameplay, right? Like, I mean, relative to your common shooter or like old Halo, where we have 8 guns, right? They're like, there are only 8. Now we have hundreds of interesting, with a little bit of, I don't know, I'd say spice, I guess.
Sass.
Yeah. A little texture, maybe you might say.
Yeah.
And then a bunch of really interesting exotics that push the envelope. And, I would like it better if it was even stronger, where you could mix and match. Like, I've built out this really interesting build, which goes with my armor, which goes with my gun, to like, and then that was identifiable, when you dropped into the match, and from my personal preference, and then you can't change it, you're locked to that. But like, that's going to create a bunch of conversation.
Generous.
And I will say also addressing the question, the goal I have in big bold letters on the top of my little like OneNote space for exotic weapons is, it basically says that exotic weapons are not better. They're just really good at doing one thing. Like, they should be a thing that I think the terminology we use is it's a weapon that you plan a build around, or it's a weapon that you use to complement a playstyle that you're already opting into. And so if you're running an exotic, that shouldn't necessarily mean you're going to be better than a guy running a legendary, but it means it should be really good at doing one thing. And it may not be your thing, but if it's really good for somebody out there, then I consider it a success. The weapon I always put on a pedestal to prove this point is No Land Beyond. So No Land Beyond released to basically a whole bunch of farts from the community. They're like, what is this trash? Get it out of my face, Bungie. But it's really good for a handful of people, and now it sort of has this cult following of people who really, really like it. And I consider that a success. It's definitely not for everybody, and I do try to make exotic weapons that are more geared towards like a lot of playstyles and very complementary to a lot of playstyles. But at the end of the day, the main goal I'm trying to hit is like, this is a weapon that complements a build or gets a player thinking about a specific build that they want to run.
Yeah. Well, I guess we're wrapping up. Thank you guys so much for coming on the show. I guess maybe just to close out, you guys dangle as an excuse in front of us all the time that any time you spend working on old stuff is taken away from new stuff.
It's not an excuse, it's the truth.
Yeah.
No, yeah, that,
lies.
Says things like that.
Conspiracy.
Equivocators.
Okay, I'm sending you guys tinfoil hats.
Well, and I know it's probably very limited, perhaps to nothing at all, but is there anything about the future of Destiny that you guys feel comfortable sharing that we can look forward to, some new direction that you'd like to take, or a new set of goals that you have in mind when it comes to the Crucible?
Custom games.
Custom games are.
Come on, Bert, say the word.
Interesting. I'll say, like, I'm kicking around, and this is not solidified because we don't have a version that works well, but I would like you to commit a little bit stronger to, and the PvP guys agree here, but have a little bit stronger commitment to your play style so that everyone else sort of knows what you're showing up with, right? And I talked.
That's pretty vague, Sage. You want to explain that?
Yeah, I'm gonna explain it. Get fucked.
How's that for an explanation?
Yeah.
The end.
So I talked a little bit about this for the classes, that when we design them, the subclasses, like we have these different paths that these sort of, inherent power fantasies that we talk about. And I've been recently calling them specializations. At one point in time, years ago, we talked about them of like, you go to learn Kung Fu and you're like, okay, I learned Tiger style, now I learn Crane style, now I can combine Tiger and Crane style. This is sweet. I think the game would benefit, at least in the high end, from knowing sort of more about what people are bringing to the table. If I was to take a particular slice out of the subclasses and give you the ability to like double down on that play style with some intrinsic node or something like that, but then hold you to that over the course of the game so that everyone knew kind of more what you were bringing and then more what I can expect when I see that particular player. And we've definitely talked about that a bunch of different ways. Like, how can we slice that up in a way that is appealing, that doesn't lock you into, real strong styles. So we're like poking at that quite a bit. And the PvP guys, like, they want it to be strong. Like, they want that reservoir. We call it the reservoir dog shot. At the very beginning, when it shows you all opening the map, that like I could look at that and I could gain more than just, hey, what gun is he using and what exotic does he have? But like, how is his build configured in some way?
Yeah,
right?
I feel like the exotic armor does a good job of scratching the surface of that, where like you see a warlock and he's got purple glowy things on his arm. He's wearing nothing manacles, which means he's void, and he's using a scatter grenade. Well, if he's he's not an idiot about it, he's using a scatter grenade. So yeah, that starts the conversation that Sage is getting to there, where we're thinking about what are ways to better forecast that.
Yeah, but this is not, again, this is like way out. This is like releases away, not like, oh, we might do this in the next patch.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
So yeah,
something we're thinking about.
Yeah, more
Grain of salt.
More short term. Yes, we plan to continue our pledge to continually update the game, not have a long period of, no one likes a dry spell. We're gonna make that not happen. We will continue to update the game, make it interesting, look at what the meta is, and how we feel the game is playing globally. That doesn't mean everybody's going to get their wish every time by any means, but it will certainly change and evolve, and hopefully everybody is still really enjoying playing, right? And that's probably the most important thing, is that like it doesn't feel like work. Like it should be fun. You should come home from work and get in line with your buddies and like shoot each other in the face for a couple of hours, and like that should be a good time. That shouldn't be like
you gotta like do your chores on the chore chart.
Yeah. I mean, so there's definitely some of that we'd like to push on.
Yeah, and I would say for weapons, on a similar tone that sort of Sage set up, where like this is a thing that I think about a lot in the world of weapons, and it's not a thing that I'm definitely going to like slam dunk into the build on the next patch update, but it's definitely like long term, this is the thing I think about a lot, which is the personal attachment that a player has to their favorite guns. How can we make sure that is a meaningful thing, and that there's a little bit more player ownership in sort of like the speccing and creation and look and feel of that gun, and that is the thing that a player can take with them on a very long journey that is longer than how long it takes for me to bump the attack up to the max level for this release.
Yeah.
It's a dream, though. It's a speck in my eye.
Rip the dream.
Yeah. Well, actually, I have to get going because I have a small human child at home waiting for me. So.
All right. Well, guys, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Yeah, this was
Seriously, thank you so much.
Yeah, gentlemen, I hope you got a bunch of stuff, and our bosses aren't super pissed.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I think we'll have like 10 minutes of usable stuff. We'll just trim it down, and then it should be fine.
Totally. Thanks a ton, guys.
Bones here. I like Destiny, and I like sniping, and I'm a really cool guy.
Let me pour this whiskey right here. I'm thirsty. I love this whiskey. It's real good.
Yeah, and I like pepperoni too. I like pepperoni pizza. I'm Bones. Blah.
Let me eat this whole pizza on stream.
Enough, Bones. Enough. No one wants to hear about how much you love pizza and whiskey.
Ugh. This guy, always rubbing pizza and whiskey in our faces.
Unbelievable. Swain, you know how this show's supposed to end. Take us out.
As always, follow us on everywhere. Crucible Radio, Twitter, Facebook, Bungie.net. You can find us everywhere. I would especially like it if you followed us on Facebook. And follow Mean Bones on Twitch, twitch.tv/Swainstash and Drybones81. That's a bones with a Z.
Yeah, come check me out. I'm a 1%er. Oh, I'm 99%. No, I use a sniper.
Look at me snipe this guy. I don't even care. Like Last Guardian standing.
Perks, blah. I think we nailed it.
Boom.